Schrödinger's Chat, the podcast where I explore the real science behind the biggest questions in the universe, as well as some of the quirkier science we encounter every day. I'm Anna, a sixth form physics student with a lot of curiosity and a passion for understanding how the world works. From the smallest particles to the largest galaxies, join me as we unlock the mysteries and wonders of the universe and explore how physics shapes the world around us. Today, we are looking at a rather unusual and perhaps unexpectedly sciencey topic: zebras. Now, I reckon zebras have one of the most iconic patterns of all animals, but whenever I see them on a wildlife documentary, I find myself wondering, why on earth are they black and white? Zebras are found in savannas, grasslands, woodlands and shrublands, but their pattern really doesn't seem to match any of the colours in these environments, or even look similar to any of the other species who are trying to camouflage in these habitats. Now, I'm not a biologist, but if I know anything about special features in animals, it's that they must have some purpose. Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection tells us that only traits beneficial to the survival and continuation of the species can be allowed to evolve. So, what purpose does a seemingly counterintuitive pattern have that allows it to exist? Well, whilst we're on the subject of evolution, let's quickly familiarise ourselves with some zebra ancestry. We know zebras as large herbivorous mammals closely related to horses or donkeys, but their one defining feature that sets them apart from other equids is their stripy pattern. Here's the thing, zebras weren't always striped. In fact, their ancestors didn't have any stripes at all. By looking at the fossil record, we can see that early equids actually had soil-coloured coats. So at some point, about 2 to 4 million years ago, stripes started showing up. But why? Let's start with camouflage. Some earlier theories about zebra stripes suggested that they helped the animals to blend into the tall grasses in savannas and shrublands. I don't know about you, but I struggled to get behind this idea, as their striking black and white really doesn't seem to hide them much in the yellows, greens and browns of these environments. So do they stick out to blend in, or is camo not a part of their pattern at all? Well, as it turns out, their pattern and colour helps them evade predators in a very different way to other animals: the dazzle effect. In fact, zebras' patterns work best as a herd rather than as a single zebra, unlike other herd animals where their colouring camouflages them as a whole as well as an individual. When a herd of zebras run together, they create something called motion dazzle, and it works sort of like an optical illusion. As the herd moves, the stripes confuse predators, making it harder for them to focus on any one zebra. For a predator like a lion, which has vision that's adapted to track movement, the stripes throw off their ability to judge speed and direction, and therefore pinpoint a single target. Now this leads us to a fascinating part of vision science. Predators like lions and hyenas don't actually see the world in the same way that we do. Most predators are dichromatic, which means they can see blues and yellows, but not reds and greens the way that humans do. So they perceive contrast very differently. In fact, zebras are probably not as strikingly contrasting to them as they are to us, but when in motion, that contrast is far more exaggerated, making it harder to focus on just one animal. The contrast and pattern of a whole herd of zebras moving breaks up their outline and makes it really difficult for a lion to pick off one zebra, which is how they hunt successfully. So for zebras, the herd really is safety in numbers. The dazzle effect is actually something that has been used by us humans too, most prominently on ships in World War I and II. British artist Norman Wilkinson developed a form of ship camouflage that relied on motion dazzle. By painting ships in black and white patterns, it confused the enemy by breaking up the visual shape of a ship, making it difficult to estimate its speed, direction and course. This was particularly useful against German U-boats, which relied on periscopes to identify and target ships. The effectiveness of motion dazzle has even been shown through human studies. In one study, subjects tried to capture moving targets in a computer game. Some high-contrast patterns like bands and zigzags seem to make it harder to capture the target. And it's not just big cats and humans that are confused by stripes. They also affect some of the smallest but most irritating pests, flies. Scientists think that the stripe pattern disrupts the ways flies process polarised light, which they rely on for navigation. Now, polarized light is light that can only oscillate in one plane, and it's what flies use to navigate. So, the way zebra stripes interfere with this navigation system may help to prevent flies from landing on them. In fact, experiments of painted horse models showed this, and during a study, species of biting flies tended to land far less on striped surfaces than plain ones. Amongst zebras themselves, they use stripes for identification. Just like how fingerprints are unique to each individual human, stripe patterns are unique to every zebra. This helps them to recognize each other within a herd, and it also helps mother zebras identify their young, which is really cute. Okay, now let's move on to a less obvious but slightly more physicsy purpose of zebra stripes: thermoregulation. Infrared is a type of electromagnetic radiation that is between visible light and microwave on the electromagnetic spectrum. So it has longer wavelength than visible light, so we can't see it, but a shorter wavelength than microwaves. Now, we know that the colour black is the best absorber of infrared radiation and white is the best emitter. You can see this even in simple everyday situations, like how wearing a black t-shirt on a sunny day is much hotter than wearing a white t-shirt, or how in hotter countries, houses tend to be painted in lighter colours to reflect the heat better. And here's where the physics comes in. It turns out the stripes might be doing more than just absorbing and reflecting heat in a simple way. Researchers have found that the difference in temperature between the black and white stripes actually causes air to move differently over the zebra's body. So, when sunlight heats the zebra's black stripes, the air above those areas warms up and rises, creating a small airflow. Meanwhile, the white stripes, being cooler, don't heat up the air as much. This difference in temperature between the stripes creates tiny convection currents in the air above the zebra's body, which helps them cool down faster. This is what's called a boundary layer effect. A boundary layer is a thin layer of flowing gas or liquid in contact with a surface. The air close to a surface, in this case the zebra's skin, moves slower than the air further away. Just to clarify, convection is a type of heat transfer that occurs in fluids, so liquids and gases. Temperature differences within these fluids creates a continuous flow because the hot fluid rises, cools, and then sinks back down, creating a circular current through the fluid. For zebras, these convection currents help break up the stagnant air above their skin, improving heat loss. In fact, using thermal imaging cameras, research has shown that on hot days, zebras' black stripes can be 12 to 15 degrees Celsius warmer than white stripes. Alright, so those are the main reasons stripes are useful for zebras, but their inspiration in human innovations is where it gets even more interesting and cool. So let's jump into the world of biomimicry, the science of mimicking natural systems in human technology. For example, researchers have used the concepts of thermoregulation from zebra stripes to design cooling fabrics. The idea is that fabrics designed with high contrast, alternating light and dark patterns could use similar principles to those of zebra stripes, helping to cool the body in hot conditions. This could be used in sportswear as well as everyday clothes, and I think this could become particularly useful in a world where climate change is increasing global temperatures every year. This is also something that can be applied to urban design. Many large urban areas experience something called the urban heat island effect, or the UHI effect. This is where the air temperature in urban areas, mainly big cities, are significantly higher than surrounding rural areas. Some notable cities that experience the UHI include New York, LA, Delhi, London, and there are many reasons that contribute to this. Some factors include lack of vegetation, larger, more densely packed populations in cities, industrial processes, traffic, and more dark heat-absorbing surfaces like concrete and asphalt being present. Reducing this effect is really important for many reasons. From an environmental perspective, the UHI effect traps pollutants in the air, reduces water quality, and can therefore negatively affect ecosystems and the animals that live within them. For us humans, severely increased temperatures and intensified heat waves could lead to more frequent heat-related illness. This is particularly clear in a city like New York, which has one of the highest UHI index values. For New York, 78% of its inhabitants live in areas that are significantly affected by the UHI. Believe it or not, even economic stability is threatened by the UHI effect, particularly in countries that are less economically developed. Higher temperatures increase the demand for cooling technology such as aircon, which requires a larger energy consumption, increasing energy bills and placing stress on national energy grids. Extreme heat can also damage infrastructure. For example, roads and bridges can be affected by thermal expansion due to higher temperatures, leading to cracks in roads and bridges, damage to railway tracks, and deterioration of pavements. So how can zebra stripes help? Well, using the same thermoregulation concepts, stripes could potentially be used in materials that reduce the heat absorbed by buildings and cities. By using alternating light and dark surfaces on buildings, we could reduce the UHI effect. Also, by using lighter coloured materials on roads and pavements, we could reduce the damage to infrastructure. And finally, fluid dynamics, the study of how liquids and gases move. Engineers and scientists often use computational fluid dynamics, or CFD, to simulate airflow in various environments and systems. Researchers have even used zebra stripes as a model to better understand how air flows around surfaces, which has huge implications on everything from aerodynamics to heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. However, this is not to be confused with zebra analysis, which is a type of shading technique used in computer graphics to visualize the curvature on smooth surfaces, and is sometimes called zebra striping, but is not actually anything to do with how real zebra stripes can help model fluid dynamics. So, why do zebras have stripes? Well, it's not just for fashion. There's a combination of reasons, as we've seen, from thermoregulation to predator confusion and even insect deterrence. These stripes have evolved to serve multiple purposes, helping zebras survive in their environments. But beyond this, what's really fascinating is how much we can learn from studying nature. The zebra stripes give us a look into physics, engineering, and even the world of design. I think it's a perfect example of how science isn't just about facts and equations. It's about seeing the world in new ways and asking why things are the way they are. That's all for today. Thank you so much for joining me on Schrödinger's Chat. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, stay curious, and if there's a heat wave, maybe try putting some funky black and white stripy outfits on. Bye!